Well, many thanks to you all for listening and for this kind invitation to come to this conference. I had a dilemma in this conference. I didn't want to be a typical American. What do you mean you don't understand English? On the other hand, the Swedish language is a very beautiful language, but I do not speak it very pretty. It comes out poor. So that I will not injure your ears with my terrible Swedish, I will speak in English, and thank you for your patience on that. I'm going to be talking about some of the books and some of the publications that are used in this talk, and I want to pass them around so that you've got them. And if you get tired of listening to me, then you can always read the book. So this is what I'm going to be passing around. First of all, 2 books that I did not write. All right. The first one is a very new book, and I'll come to this at the end. It's called The Swedish Pietists, a Reader. Some of you might know Dr. Mark Safstrom at the University of Illinois. He has written a translated a collection of writings from Carl Olof Rosenius and P.P. Waldenström. And some of the first time that this is in English. He also translated Squire Adamson into English, so I'll send that around. And then I have written another reader, on all the Scandinavian pietists. So Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and that's what this one is. And then 2 more. The first book that I wrote with Maria Erling was a history of the Swedish Lutherans in America, the Augustana Synod. So, and this is this one around. And then the latest thing that I have written is a book on Lutherans in America, a new history of Lutheranism in America. And I brought, if you are interested in any of these books, I brought a copy for the library here at Johannalund. So these will all go to the library, so they don't have to be in my luggage on the way home. Finally, the latest issue of Pietisten, the American version. And I thought that would be good. So I'll just hand these around. Let's just start here. There you go. So, there's our man. There we go. I propose to look at, and by the way, if you would like a copy of the paper or the copy of the PowerPoint, please see me afterwards and give me an email address, and I will be glad to share that with you. All right. I propose to look at 5 different areas. First of all, Rosenius, his direct influence on 19th century American Protestantism. The next would be his influence on the culture of Scandinavian Americans and their religious culture. Then the translation of Rosenius into English, and then his hymns in English, and then some brief thoughts on his contemporary influence. So this is an experience I have quite frequently. I will go into an old Scandinavian church in the U.S., and they will know that I'm a professor and I like these old books and everything, and they say, "Oh, well, we have some old books you should look at." And usually they go back into some closet somewhere and they open the door and they blow the dust off of them and everything like that. And I can't tell you how many times I have seen shelves full of books. The editions of Pietistan, the Epistle to the Romans, the daily devotions, and other sorts of works. It goes to show how far the works of Rosenius went. Unfortunately, they're in a closet now, but that's... So, what can we say? The first thing I would like to look at is his direct correspondence with the Americans, especially with the American societies that supported him or that were helpful for him. The most, if non-Scandinavian Americans knew Rosenius in the 19th century, it was because he wrote a number of long letters about what was going on in Sweden and in Scandinavia with the American and Foreign Christian Union. In all, a total of about 34 letters from Rosenius to Robert Baird and his successors as the secretary of the American and Foreign Christian Union. And they were printed in a publication called The Christian World, which had quite a circulation in among Protestants in North America. And the introductions to these letters are often quite very positive, glowing almost. Our Swedish missionary, and reports from Sweden and other kinds of things like that. Very interested. It's quite a resource for understanding the history of the awakening in Sweden. These letters, and yes, it's quite a thing. So he was known in the middle of the century, from about 1849 to 1864, for his reports to America.
I wonder.
Please.
Are these letters translated to English or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And they're available in a collection. Gunnar Weston collected them together.
And did Rosenius translate them himself? Or?
That I don't know. Does anyone know? I really don't know. I think his English was okay, but maybe Scott may have helped him. Anyways, yes. So that was the direct influence that he would have had. I assume that they end about 1864 because of Rosenius' health and maybe his cutting back on his activities. That would be my guess. So. But the greater influence is going to be in all the Scandinavians who come to the United States. So you know that there was this great 19th century migration of Scandinavians to America. My people came between 1880 and about 1905 from different parts of Sweden, and it was a part of a much greater immigration. Somewhere around 30 to 35 million Europeans came to North America in the period of time between about 1840 and the First World War in 1914. Of these, 1.25 million were Swedes. About 20% of the population of Sweden in 1840. So if you think, it's hard to figure out what percentage of the population it was. About 1 million Norwegians, that was 25% of the population of Norway, if you think about that. And then smaller numbers of Danes and Finns. These people came over and created a vibrant, bilingual world. These were very literate people, and they were much in demand. Swedes and Norwegians and Danes, they were good immigrants. All right, they were good because they were Protestants. All right, that was helpful, and because they were hardworking, and you could get a good Swedish girl to come into your house and clean and cook, and they were very in demand. In many places, especially in the upper Midwest, they took over a lot of the construction trades. So builders, painters, many painters. I'm not quite sure why, but that was a very common thing. So, anyways, about that. Then the religious aspects of this immigration. Okay, so obviously this immigration is happening at the same time as the great awakenings in Scandinavia, and the conflicts between you know this as well, probably better than I do. The conflicts between the state church and the awakened Christians, the pietism, and then of course the important elements that are sort of under the table of populism, democratization. You just can't read the awakenings by Hauge and Rosenius and Lestadius and others, Hedberg, without understanding that there's a shift, a social shift in that world as well. Now, most immigrants did not leave Scandinavia because they were unhappy with the church. Most of the immigrants came for economic opportunities. On the other hand, many of them did have religious grievances, and many of the leaders, many of the church leaders of the immigration were those people either who had been clergy in Scandinavia, or more likely had never been able to become a church leader because they knew they could never go to the university, or they could never go to the they could never get into the church, and the church wouldn't accept them. And so this is what is key in this whole thing. Many of the early leaders of these Scandinavian American churches were from the mission schools. So Fjellsted, Alberg, yeah, and others around the Scandinavia. They were not state church. Very, very, very few state church priests left Scandinavia to come to the United States. In terms of the Swedes, I can think of about 5, and one of them didn't stay. So what kind of groups, what kind of churches did they find? All right, here you go. By the way, the little map in the bottom there is where the Swedes were We say in Minnesota, the Swedes were the densest. Playing a pun on that word, right? So the largest group of Swedish immigrants were in the Augustana Synod, which was a Lutheran church, which its roots go back to the 1840s, but was founded as an independent church in 1860. This is not an attempt, by the way, the Augustana Synod is not an attempt to replicate the Church of Sweden. It is an attempt to, which is very common in America. Religious groups will come over and they will say, now we get to start over and do it right. Maybe starting with the Puritans in the 16th century, in the 17th century. Now we're going to do it right. And so it was an attempt to develop a Swedish Lutheran church along the lines of the Pietist awakening. All right, still Lutheran, confessionally Lutheran, but Pietist in its soul. All right. The next group is the Baptist General Conference, or the Swedish Baptists. And actually, the Baptist Church begins. The Swedish Baptist Church begins in America and is taken back to Sweden. There's Swedes who are converted in Germany and in New York and other places, and then they will bring Baptists back. Then the Swedish Mission Covenant, today's Evangelical Covenant Church, the Swedish Evangelical Free Church, and then the Swedish Methodists. And again, Methodism, more or less born, Swedish Methodism, more or less born in America, taken back to Sweden. And you wonder why it is that the Covenant and the Free Church are separate. And we'll move into that. We'll talk about that a little bit more. My friends, the Norwegians, among whom I live and work. God love them. It looks like the wiring diagram to a submarine. The Norwegians broke up into 5 or 6 different Lutheran churches along the way, but they all stayed Lutheran. And that's one of the interesting differences between the Swedes and the Norwegians in America, in that you get the formation of a very significant non-Lutheran group of congregations outside of Lutheranism. Remember, in Scandinavia, you always had the state church, and you could always sort of exist as a grumpy little group, kind of within the state church or on the edges of the state church or something like that. In America, you don't have that, and so it's the force of American religion is to break up into smaller and smaller different little groups in that sense. So the Norwegians start out, and there's basically 3 wings to the Norwegian experience in America. The first is the Norwegian Evangelical Lutheran Church, or the Norwegian Synod, the Synoden. And this is the church that is the closest to the state church of Norway. They are strongly confessional, formal, the formal use of the liturgy and everything else like that. A very high view of the ministry. Okay, now not exactly the state church, but closest to it. All right. The other wing then are the Haugianer, and the Haugianer are, of course, very low church, very democratic. You would not use a formal liturgy. I was invited to preach a number of years ago at a Haugi church in southern Minnesota for their Haugi festival. And the pastor said, please come and talk to us about Hans Nielsen. And don't bring your minister robe. So you understand the kind of, yes, the kind of, so the first one is a group that's still very small, actually, called the Eilson Synod, but a much larger group that forms in the 1870s called the Hauge Synod. All right. Now, so these two define the wings of Norwegian American Lutheranism. In the middle, the Norwegians, praise be to God, the Norwegians and the Swedes were together in the same church for 10 years, from 1860 to 1870. It must have killed them. In 1870, they had a very pleasant divorce, and the Norwegians said, well, we want to be on our own because, all right, we do. And of course, the Norwegians that left the Augustana Synod could not agree on how to do it. And so they broke up into two different groups. The Norwegian Augustana Synod and the Conference for Norwegian-Danish Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. Finally, in the 1880s, there was a major controversy among the Norwegians, just rage. They loved theological conflict. So did the Swedes. You know, if they went to a church meeting and didn't have a big theological fight, they felt that they were being cheated. But in this fight in the 1880s, the part of the Norwegian Synod broke away because they felt that the Norwegian Synod was too close to the Missouri Synod, the German church, and so they became known as the Anti-Missourian Brotherhood. I couldn't make this up. So then they all came together in the United Norwegian Church in 1890. And then there's some other smaller groups. Because every time you have a merger, then you have a small group of people that don't want to go into the merger. And anyways. But just all I want to say is there were three wings. There was the Synoden, the Haugianer, and then the United Church in the middle. All right? This will give you some relative size. I love this graphic. I found this graphic on the internet. It was sort of a patriotic pan-Scandinavian image from the 1840s. Until the Danes got into war with the Germans and the Swedes wouldn't help them out. So you can see the relative size of the various churches. The Augustana Synod was obviously much bigger than the other groups. The other groups are between 8,000 and 30,000 members. This is in 1920. This is the height of the ethnic denomination. By 1917, almost all the Norwegians had come together. They had fought theologically for 30 years, and then they decided that they wouldn't fight anymore. And then a lot of smaller churches. If you notice that the Methodists and the Free Church and the Baptists are much smaller. Okay, so the reason I went through all of this is so that I can explain Rosenius. Okay, so all five Swedish American denominations were derived from Pietism, and they reflect. The fact that there are five of them reflect the tensions and the divisions that were inherent to the awakening movement in Sweden. So there were theological issues, confessional issues, ecclesiological issues, kinds of things like this. And as I've said before, that the American voluntary religion, the idea that this is... All the immigrants face this when they come, even the latest one. We have we have Lutheran churches now in our area that are founded by immigrants from southern Sudan. And they're going through the same thing now that my ancestors were going through 150 years ago. In America, if you want religion, you're free to do it, but you pay for it yourself, and you organize it yourself, and you run it yourself. And that changes the dynamics of how religion operate. The good thing is that it makes people invest in religion. It's their church, not the pastor's church, not somebody else's church. It belongs to them. On the other hand, it tends to move towards division. I'm going to take my church and go over here, and you can go over there. I was talking to someone the other day about the Lestadians in America. At least 20 different versions of Lestadianism in America, if not more. I've given up trying to count how many divisions and other sorts of things were going. Anyways, the sharpest fight came in the 1870s and 1880s over Waldenstrom. And this is what causes the final break between the Covenant and the Free Church people and Augustana. Sometimes, now my Covenant friends say that they were pushed out of Augustana, and I said that they left, but yeah. But I mean, the nature of the controversy over Waldenstrom meant that that it involved confessional issues. In other words, what was the authority of the Augsburg Confession, the Lutheran confessions, in the church? And that's the nature of the break. But beneath it, too, then, is the battle over Rosenius. All right? Because they all wanted to say, Karl Olaf, he is our man. Conveniently or not, Karl Olaf dies before this happens. I mean, he dies and everything. And so each side could claim Rosenius as their own. The Lutherans would say, well, they wanted to know which side would Karl Olaf be on? Would he be on our side or their side? The Lutherans emphasized the fact that Rosenius was a Lutheran and told the people to stay Lutheran. The Free Church and the Covenant Church, they wanted to know. They wanted to say that Rosenius was, he worked with everybody. He was ecumenical. His core was the Bible. He didn't feel that there should be division between Christians and all those other sorts of things like that. So if you can understand much of what's going on here as that Rosenius is beloved by all and wanting to be jealously claimed by each. So very early on, let's see. Okay. Very early on, the works of Rosenius, Pietisten, and other works are distributed widely among Swedish Americans. Many of the more pious people are bringing them with them in their trunks. They have the Bible and the Psalm book and Luther's sermons and maybe Johann Arndt and maybe Karl Olaf. Those are the books that they would be bringing with them. But also many were imported. Some were printed locally. Many of the leaders of the Augustana Synod were early champions in the printing of Rosenius works in America, and they wrote introductions. Tuve Nisse Hasselquist included periodicals in articles from Rosenius in his periodicals from the middle of the 1850s. Eric Norelius, another early leader, added comments to the Betrachtelsel. Yeah. See, I told you, my tongue just trips. Olaf Olsen from Lindsborg, Kansas, wrote an introduction to parts of. He published parts of the Romans commentary. I think chapter 9 maybe and chapter 16 anyways, he's not printing the whole of the Romans commentary, but he's printing parts of it. I think he's printing parts of it because he's aiming them at the mission friends and saying, yeah, you're not right. And then C.E. Lindbergh, who is a staunch Rosenian and a longtime seminary professor. But the other Swedish groups would not give up control of Rosenius. Of course, the other one was the largest of them was the Covenant Church, founded in 1885. If you want to know, I'm not going to tell you now, but if you want to know, I can tell you all about why there is a separate Covenant Church and a separate Free Church, but that's too long and out of our range. But again, like the Norwegians, they couldn't come together. They want, yeah, okay. They claimed Rosenius very strongly in dispute with the Lutherans, his Hierenicism, his peacefulness, and his biblicism. And really, the Covenant Church has maintained its institutional legacy of Rosenian piety, probably longer than any other group in the country. The Lutherans, yeah, they liked him, but then they moved on. The Free Church, on the other hand, is very interesting. Whereas at least part of the Covenant, and the Covenant in America has two wings, the Free Church pretty quickly moves away from being Swedish and towards the direction of American evangelicalism. Moody and Sankey and Graham and people like that. Of course, there's also the Baptist General Conference and the Swedish Methodists. They have valued Rosenian piety as well, and the works were celebrated. They had a little problem with Rosenius. The Baptists had a hard time getting over the fact that Rosenius wrote a book defending infant baptism. That was kind of difficult for them to swallow. They would sort of close their eyes and say, okay, all right. The Methodists thought, well, Rosenius was good, and we like to read him and everything, but he just didn't go far enough in terms of sanctification, holiness. So here are some of the earliest publications. I mentioned Hasselquist and his publication of works from Rosenius and Pietistin. These editors, of course, were robbing each other blind, printing each other's work all over the place. Copyright was not a big issue at this point. The first publication that I can find of a work of Rosenius in America came in 1860, and this is a publication in Norwegian of the work on the Lord's Prayer in Madison, Wisconsin, which is interesting because Madison was sort of the home of that middle wing of the Norwegians. Okay. But the most, starting in the 1870s and 1880s, a flood of Rosenius in Scandinavian languages printed in the United States. Many were printed by commercial publishers. In other words, not by church publishing agencies or anything else like this, but commercial publishers, which tells me that these works were very popular because these publishers would not be publishing them if they couldn't make a profit. All right? And the most popular seem to be the daily meditations or the daily devotions. Many editions of the daily devotions. And then Norwegian Americans. I want to move on to the Norwegian Americans briefly here. I'll put this back up for your amusement. So anyways. Lots of works of Rosenius translated into Norwegian in America, or in Norway and then into America. And it's a complicated issue. We talked about the differences between them. Hauge, reading Hauge is not for the faint of heart. All right? Hauge is made of very stern stuff, and if you want, and so his piety is, it strikes me always as a struggle, a continuing struggle of how to try to find peace with God. And of course, he ignited. Remember, he was what, 30 years, 40 years before Rosenius. And so the Haugean piety and Haugean revival were very, very important in early Norway. But the next stage, of course, is Giselagansen and his revivals of the 1850s and 1860s. Now, what seems to go on, and what my Norwegian colleagues tell me, is that there was a search for a usable piety. That Rosenius, it's interesting that probably the works of Rosenius were printed and distributed among Norwegian Americans far more than any works of Hauge. If you were a Norwegian American, you were much more likely to read Rosenius than Hauge. And it's the speculation is that Rosenius was his piety and his religious thought were lighter, not as heavy as Haugeanism. And so in this revival of in the 1850s, 1860s, the importation of Norwegian piety, of Rosenian piety into Norway. An important figure in this seems to be Norwegian Bishop Lache. Did I say that right? Lache? Loka. Thank you. All right. Yes. Norwegian vowels. The Norwegian Americans appreciated Rosenius and didn't fight over him like the way the Swedes did. Now, doesn't mean that they all liked him. The more strict Haugianer thought that Rosenius was too easy. He made becoming a Christian too easy. There wasn't enough struggle. There wasn't enough kind of thing like this. The strict confessionals among some of the strict confessionals among the Norwegian Synod, the Synoden, thought that Rosenius was a little suspect on antinomianism. He was too free from the law, and that maybe that his Lutheran confessional roots weren't deep enough or something along that line. But it's in the middle where Rosenian piety really take hold. In the United Church and other groups like that. Here's one example. This is a man named Johan Nathan Gildahl, who was president of St. Olaf College and of the United Norwegian Church, who was a very strong Rosenian. And as a young man studying in seminary, he had a crisis of faith. And he credited reading Rosenius with helping him to find his way out of that crisis of faith. And frankly, I can't tell you the number of times that people have told me that. Even a colleague of mine who was in the seminary in the 1980s said an older professor said that he was having a crisis of faith, and an older professor told him that he should read Rosenius. And Rosenius helped him. He said Rosenius helped him out of his crisis of faith. So what you get then is a string of Rosenian works in Norwegian published by the United Church Publishing House, which became known eventually as Augsburg Publishing House. But the most popular of all, many, many different editions, is Bishop Locke's arrangement of Rosenius works for daily meditation. This is not the Swedish one. I think it's about 2 months long, is what it is. And if you think my Norwegian is poor, you should hear my Swedish is poor. You should hear my Norwegian. In English, it's translated as a faithful guide to peace with God. Yes. So the Scandinavian Americans produce a very rich mix of Rosenius in both Norwegian and in English. I think that there are Danish versions of Rosenius, but I couldn't find them. But who knows? They probably read the Norwegian. So, and then comes the end of bilingual Scandinavian America. It is really amazing how quickly the Scandinavian languages in America collapse. It takes about 12 years to move from, and there's lots of different reasons for this. Partially the end of the immigration because of the war and because of American restrictions on immigration after the war. Partly it's a generational shift. There's just a whole new generation taking over and they want to use English. My grandfather was confirmed in Swedish in 1912. He said, I didn't understand it. I just memorized it. And he said, my parents wanted me to speak English. They didn't speak Swedish with me because, first of all, they wanted me to learn English, but second of all, they wanted to be able to talk about things in front of the children without them understanding. So it's amazing how quickly the transition, by 1930, it's all gone. It's all gone. And begins, of course, the whole question of translating that older world into English. Now, that's difficult. Some of Rosenius survives, and other of him does not. The first two major works of Rosenius that were translated in 1923. One by the Augustana seminary professor Adolf Holt, entitled The Believer Free from the Law. And then the Norwegian devotional by Locke, translated as A Faithful Guide to Peace with God. Both were translated in 1923. Both had a long circulation. Both of them are sort of how-to books. How to become Christian, step by step. You work through the steps. So that's how Rosenius was used. Now, the daily devotions were not one, but three different translations of the same material. The first in Iowa, Decorah, Iowa, by a Norwegian in 1943. So, Rosenius Devotions, Strength for the Helpless, Lessons for All. Not to be outdone, I think a Covenant pastor in Lake Mills, Iowa, in 1945 translates it as Rosenius's Daily Meditation. And then, I wish I knew more about this. I tried to find out more, but a translation, that's a woman's name, right? Melin? Melin? Anybody know this person?
She's Finnish, I think.
Hmm?
She's Finnish.
Finnish.
Yeah.
Translated, very possibly, I couldn't find any information about her. Translated in the 1970s into a publication called Day by Day with God. Really basically all the same out of the same thing. Now they use it in different ways and it's packaged. This last one is actually in 12 different volumes. In fact, I think I saw a a version of it out on one of the tables out there. Yes, right. Printed in Bombay by the Gospel Literature Publications or something like that. It took a while. Oh, I'm sorry, this got cut off. But it took a while for the translation of the Romans commentary, which happened in 1978. And then some other smaller books on the forgiveness of sins or the prayer of faith in the recent times. Now, I'm passing around these books, but just to show you, some books, translation of the Swedish Pietist in English by Mark Safström in 2015. I think Squire Adamson came out in 2013. And then my reader on Scandinavian piety. Interesting that the publication of Rosenius has moved now towards more conservative Lutheran groups and some very different groups. There's one of the most important. You can see about 10 different versions or 10 different printings of works by Rosenius. A place called Ambassador Publications. This is a small group of actually Norwegian in background. The Association of Free Lutheran Congregations in Minneapolis. And if you want Rosenius in English, their website is the place to go. There's another place called Pieton Publications in all places of New Ipswich, New Hampshire. I've never heard of them before, but they distribute the Day by Day with God and some of the other publications. Oops. Rosenius even has an author's page on Amazon.com. I don't know what that means, but it's just there. Okay. Now, I did promise to think just briefly with you on the hymns of Rosenius in English. The hymn that we sang this morning, of course, is the most popular. If Americans know a hymn of Rosenius, it's that one. But three others. I have a friend so patient. Wheresoe'er I roam, or O precious thought. I'm sorry the graphic doesn't show up very well, but it shows the number of hymnals that those hymns appear in. Generally 10 or 15 different hymnals would have had in the 20th century, would have had hymns by Rosenius. The Lutheran hymnal, the Covenant hymnal probably has the most Rosenian hymns. Lutherans have sort of, good. The Lutheran hymnal from the 1950s had none. The Lutheran hymnal in 1970s had 2. And the newest Lutheran hymnal, none. I had a colleague who was on the hymn commission for the 1978 hymnal, and she said, I got those hymns in there by being stubborn. But so all those kind of things. One more last thing to talk about, just to think about the contemporary influence, is the journal Pietisten. It is a pan-Scandinavian group. Draws from Covenant and Augustana, Free Church, Baptist, Congregationalists, Methodists. It's not. They do print some Rosenius from time to time, along with Waldenström, but it's mainly a periodical in the spirit of how Rosenius. What would Rosenius have done if he had lived in 21st century America? What would he be interested in? kind of thing like that. It's an eclectic, very American publication, and it's interesting. You can imagine that. Well, yes. Let's just say eclectic. All right. So just some concluding thoughts. As far as I have been able to tell, the works of Rosenius have been published in America. There have been that Rosenius has been in print in America continuously since at least 1860. All right? And currently you could get a dozen or more books by Rosenius in English. Now they tend to be very small books. They tend not to be, large, but it's possible. And then of course some of the newest translations, especially by Mark Safstrom. What is his continuing influence? That's very difficult to say. Some of the hymns of Rosenius are still sung. That his works do have an influence among some of the conservative Lutheran and Covenant groups, and then there's the Pietistan community that is still going. I can't say that there's been a huge revival of Rosenius in America in the last few years, but Karl Olof is still alive. He's still in there kicking, and we are all in America better off for him being available in English. Thank you.